Good evening, and thank you for coming to the senior public speaking competition. I know many of you guys came to the sophomore one, and I appreciate you coming to both. We have our seniors sitting right over here who will be performing in just a few moments. In the back, we have our judges who will be evaluating the top three on not only the written speech, but on the delivery, on the voice, on body language, and we have Darrius getting ready to go first over there. One last reminder. I know many of you want to get back on your cell phones, but make sure you turn those off and keep off them during the performances, during the speeches tonight. And without further ado, we're going to start with Darrius Campbell.
If lying is a biblical sin and morally wrong, why do we do it? At Blair Academy, even at home in South Carolina, I am known for being a notorious liar. This is especially bad because my family viewed lying as a religious sin. I always try to make myself feel better by saying, I do not lie about things in serious situations. A prime example of this is when my mother asked me once, who took the last cookie out of my favorite Sandy's pecan shortbread pack? I owned up to it and said, it was me, mostly because I had some crumbs around my adolescent milk mustache. Recently, someone told me that I am a compulsive liar. If you know me, you know that is not true. I'm not going to say it, I know it's true, but I never realized how much I did lie to people. I was curious to know why my first instinct is to lie when asked a question, so I went on Google and came across an interesting article. David L. Smith, an associate professor of philosophy at the University of New England, said, it lets you manipulate the way you want to be seen by others. I know who I am and what I want to do with my life, so why would I have to lie in order to make people think differently of me? After 18 years, 14 days, 3 hours, and 3 seconds, I finally figured out why I lied. In past years, whenever I lied, I did it to make others happy. I do not like seeing someone upset because there's just something about discouraging expressions that seem sadly familiar. My mother's facial expression constantly showed exhaustion of having to deal with yet another issue. From what I can remember, I have only seen her smile maybe 20 times, and all the times I did see her smile, it was from someone cracking a funny joke. I wanted her to be happy so badly, but I could never figure out why wasn't she happy. I remember when I was at home one day, and I heard whimpering. I could not figure out who was making those dog-like sounds. As I walked down the never-ending angular hallway, I came across my mother's room, and the whimpering grew louder. I walked into my mother's sky blue room, and I saw her on the bed crying. When I saw those diamond-like tears running down her dark skin, it almost felt like my heart would burst. Walking closely towards her, I said, "Hey, Mama, is everything all right?" I knew she was feeling awful, but she replied, "Everything is fine, baby. Mama's always all right." I instinctively believed her, but I also knew she was lying. Why would you cry if nothing was wrong? Why lie to your oldest son? I later found out we were moving again, back from our home and into the shelter. She did not want me to worry about anything because she wanted me to be fine, content, and ecstatic with life. At the time, she was a single mother of 5, and we were moving back into the shelter for maybe the 3rd time. But she tried her best to assure us that everything was fine. I noticed that my siblings received anything they asked for. Even if it was my mother's last dollar, she would give it away. mother was such a good liar. She made it seem like she had more money to spare, but my late night snacks always ended up with me crying next to my mother's doorway because she was crying over our situation. I wanted her to be happy so badly that I even thought about suicide. I thought maybe if there was one less kid in the house, things would change. My siblings would be taken care of, and my mother would smile again because she wouldn't be stressed, depressed, or angry. I became goofy and did silly things such as dance in funny ways in order to make her smile, and it did. I was at a school dance once, and I had no idea how to dance, especially around girls, but I felt the beat and swayed along nice and cool. After the dance, I came back home and told my mother all about my night. She did not seem that interested until she saw my little sway, and it drew her. She smiled with disbelief and excitement because she did not know I was working with a little swag. Little things such as just showing her my dance moves made her happy, and that was rewarding to me, and I wanted to do it again. I began to think of other ways to make her smile. I told small lies to make stories more interesting for her. I knew money was a tough aspect in her life, and so I would only ask for things I needed. I wanted a ton of things, and I know my mother knew that, but I would never tell her because I did not want her to worry about anything. Things appeared to be going well until it all changed. We were living in New York at the time, and after a long day of school, I came home. My youngest brother, Amari, kept crying. I went to check on him, and as I was walking through the kitchen and into the living room, a smell of disgust knocked me to the ground. Oh, Jesus, ooh, what was that smell? It was a nose killer for sure. At that moment, my mother walked out of my siblings' room in tears. It was almost as if a hurricane full of tears and emotions just smacked her, dead in the face all at once. Those diamond tears are definitely hard to forget because they always made my heart want to burst. Mama, what's wrong? I said. I am broke, Darrius. Amari needs Pampers and I just don't have it. I called his dad and he did not pick up. Men are worthless. Everything will be alright, Mama. People go through things all the time. It's only temporary. I am in this by myself. I cannot do this anymore, Darrius. I cannot put my kids, my loves, through this anymore. God, why? Tell me now, tell me. I was speechless. There were no more lies. She told me the truth and I could not deal with it because it hurt. This truth hurt more than my girlfriend Aisha at the time, telling the entire class that she was just using me. This truth hurt more than the 49 steps I took up the dark, dingy, dreary stairs up to the 3rd floor of the shelter. This truth even hurt more than the truth that my biological dad was alive, and he was never coming back to see me again because he was putting his other family with his 2 daughters ahead of me. Excuse me, sorry. I went into my room that I shared with my brother Blair to drop my black North Face book bag down. As I was doing so, I heard rustle of plastic bags. What could my mother possibly be doing with plastic bags, I thought. She had taken off my brother's diaper and put it in a plastic bag. She wiped his butt and began crying some more. The sound of her diamond-like tears hitting the ground resembled a pocket full of coins rattling in someone's pants pocket. She took a bigger plastic bag from beside her and wrapped his genital area with that bag. I could not believe it. She said to herself, "Why me, Lord? I am an awful mother. I will never do this again. My children deserve better, much better than me." After she got finished putting the plastic pamper on, she left. As she was walking out of the living room, I ran behind her in silence and gave her a hug. I told her, "Everything will be okay, Mama. You just watch and see." I was being optimistic, But I wish I did not have to live a life like that. I wish I could have lived the life I wanted and not the one handed to me. But I think my purpose in life is to make things much better for my family and for my mother because they deserve better. I had to assure her that everything will be all right because it will. I am 18 years old now, and the only thing I think about is helping my mother out. I only do things for her, such as being more responsible than necessary. I do not smoke or drink even when under pressure, and I went from going to a terrible 20 out of 350 students go to college middle school to a private boarding school. I am determined to do well for myself in order to help her out, and I do not care how big, strong, or smart the obstacles are. I will get past it because my determination is far more persistent than anything out there. I will not stop until she is happy because that is my motivation. Some may say, your happiness should be more important to you, but to be honest, it is not. I do not care about my happiness, and anything I do care about comes before my happiness. If lightning were to strike down and hit me square in the heart right this second, I will not stop going until I knew my mother was happy. Until I know she is content with the way she raised my siblings and I. Until I know that she realizes that pain, agony, and despair are only temporary griefs. Until she knows that to me, she's a wonderful mother that has struggled through adversities but persevered through life. Mama, I know you're not here right now, but you are a beautiful person inside and out. You are my drive, my inspiration, my everything. You are my mama. Although a happy ending is not given, no, my determination to please my mother will never change. Know that people go through challenges every day. They should not be judged, but rather respected and acknowledged for getting through those challenges and for creating hope for others. Know that time never stops for you, but your constant, everlasting determination can change your life and others for the better. If lying is a biblical sin and morally wrong, why do people do it? Why do we do it? We do it because the truth is just sometimes too hard to handle. Thank you.
Now I live in my imagination, and I love to get lost in the space, but I genuinely think that I suffer from a disorder called maladaptive daydreaming, which is simply daydreaming excessively. From my perspective, maladaptive daydreaming does not negatively influence me. In fact, I view this disorder as a positive character trait. My compulsive fantasies fuel my inspiration and imagination, which inspires my actual hopes in one day of making novels, writing movies, and screenplays. My excessive daydreaming began when I was a child during my elementary years. The daydreaming was triggered by video games, cartoons, comics, movies, anything where I would essentially hijack the characters and recreate them for my own virtual world. With the characters, I would represent the dreams by actual actions, especially in my family's living room. The physical actions would simulate the movie-style scenes in my head, and I would pace back and forth crazily, or jump couch to couch, chair to chair, imagining, acting, and directing these characters that were in my head. My parents and siblings would often discover me in my dreaming sessions and think I was wrong, think something was wrong with me or I was crazy. For example, my mother would say, "John, what in the world are you doing?" Or my dad, "John! John! Don't do that silly stuff, go outside." And my favorite line from my sweet little sister, "John, you're like 4 years older than me, and you're still still playing in La La Land. As I matured, my excessive daydreaming and the way I expressed my constant dreams and emotions developed as well. Instead of hopping around pretending I'm a futuristic freedom fighter flying a giant spaceship, I started to use words to embody my imagination. When I got to Blair, my excessive daydreaming slowed down a little bit. Freshman year, my roommate and I did not get along very well, and of course, I always felt a bit embarrassed about my excessive daydreaming, so I was very private about it. Many times, Brent Martin would come back from afternoon sports to a locked room. Now, a locked room with a lone male teenager may sound a bit inappropriate, but I swear, all I was doing was pretending I was shooting down some aliens. The same thing was happening sophomore year, except Shroff and I didn't have a lock on our door in East, so now I would be daydreaming alone with the door unlocked. There are many times where Shroff would just bust open the door, and in that split second, I would switch back to reality and pretend I was like making up my bed or picking something. It all depended on the physical position that I would get caught in. Every time this happened, Shroff would always give me this smile like he really knew what was going on. But if you know Shroff, you know he really didn't know. My daydreaming hit a brick wall and stopped completely with my next roommate. Junior year was the era of Darrius Campbell. Some of you know very well my ex-roommate and good friend Darrius has this no nonsense except his nonsense mentality. And I'm a chill, relaxed kind of guy, so we got along all right. But I mean, sometimes, and a lot of people know and have experienced this, conversations with Darrius can be compared to playing with a rattlesnake. You just have to stop playing with him once you hear the rattle. Anyways, my daydreaming in the room began to stop, but in the classroom, it began to grow. In U.S. history, I'm an Indian shooting down pilgrims. In physics, I'm going out for coffee with Einstein. In math, I'm surfing on the bell curve. In my Lord of the Rings class, while we talking about Middle Earth, brother, I am in Middle Earth. This is how it is. I live in my imagination. Now, I'm proud to say I'm a senior prefect in Davies Hall, and I have a single all to myself. And yes, I do daydream quite often. I will be in my room alone and just think and dream. If what I'm imagining feels and looks creative to me, I'll write it down and use it later for other creative outlets. People don't really see what I do, so when people see me, they see me daydreaming, they think I'm crazy. But I'm not that. I'm not crazy. No way, no way. I refuse to believe that. It's like the SpongeBob episode. When SpongeBob and Patrick get the big TV box, and a huge TV comes in the mail, they throw out the TV and use the box for their imagination. Here's SpongeBob and Patrick in the box, and there will be helicopter noises and avalanche noises, but when Squirrel went to open the box, it would just be SpongeBob and Patrick sitting there. That is the same exact situation that I go through. SpongeBob told Squidward that they were simply using their imagination. So now when anyone catches me daydreaming, I'm just telling them to use their freaking imagination. I live in lies. When I looked up and discovered what maladaptive daydreaming was on my computer, I stared at the screen and started daydreaming. I believe it's a blessing. A blessing that I use for everything. When I needed a little push in life, my compulsive fantasies pushed me up that hill of life, and it's still pushing. My disorder is truly a gift. Thank you.
Michaud.
The first story I ever wrote was about a girl who comes home and finds her house had been robbed. So she runs out to the woods, finds the robbers, beats them up, and goes home. Plot twist. A fairy drops by and tells her she was actually a long-lost princess the whole time. As you can probably tell, I was inspired by the M. Night Shyamalan twist ending at the age of 5. This seems like a really insignificant little anecdote. It probably is. However, the more I thought about it, I was surprised by what happens to the girl. In so many lines, all I remember now about her is she returns to her house to find her home is compromised. She runs off to fight those who have wronged her. She succeeds, and finally she discovers her true worth. This is how my mind worked at that age. I had no active imagination. I was lonely, often overshadowed and definitely overlooked. I've always seemed small, in stature and impression. I feared my own weakness. Kids my own age often poked fun at me, laughing at my shortness, both from my height and my temper. I screamed a lot. I made a lot of empty threats. I had a strange paranoia to other people's ability to hurt me, and was always ready at the gate for a fight. Luckily, the time never came because I feared losing more than anything else. In my life, I have gotten in one real fight. I was 6. I got the stuffing knocked out of me on a playground in Aruba by a boy a few years older than me, as his mother watched from a few yards away. It was humiliating. Nobody intervened. If I remember correctly, he took a toy out of my hands and I attacked him. Only to be thrown into the sand time and time again. It took me receiving one good punch to the stomach to give up. There's a disgustingly heavy feeling when you lose a fight that badly. I was 6, raised under the principle I was not nearly as gifted or important as the other occupants of my household, and had everything to prove. And I failed, quite miserably at that. When my mind returned to that state of helplessness and weakness, my temper flared and I'd be faced with an internal ugliness I didn't know how to deal with. When I was 5, I had 3 loves: Han Solo, Superman, and the Crocodile Hunter. Everything else is settling when your first loves are Han Solo, Superman, and the Crocodile Hunter. To me, they were pillars of strength and bravery. But I didn't want to be saved by them. I wanted to be them. I was bored by people who didn't shoot first, withstand nuclear holocaust, or punch sharks in the face. I wanted to be a respected peer of these heroes. In Neil Gaiman's The Sandman Volume 5, he states, "Everybody has a secret world inside of them. All of the people in the whole world, I mean everybody, no matter how dull and boring they are on the outside. Inside them, they've all got unimaginable, magnificent, wonderful, stupid, amazing worlds. Not just one world, hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe." So as a kid, my imagination took me to a different world, one where I was roughly 6 feet tall and looked like a scary bodybuilder. It was my alter ego when I was trying to be tough. My face would arrange in an angry mask, and I'd try to defend myself using the sheer force of my other self. It was a crutch. I'd imagine that one day I would be strong, and I'd find another kid like me, who was lost, who was lonely, who was weak, and I would defend them from the bullies until they could fight their battles as well as I could. This is why I normally march around with a glazed, blank stare. My mind is somewhere else. I tend to zone out into my own little world. I read constantly from the age of 5 to, well, let's say my New Year's resolution was to read 100 books, and I've just completed my 43rd. I read because I needed somewhere to go where I wasn't me, I didn't know anybody, and they knew nothing about me. It was a good way to forget. I read because I had nowhere else to go. I read because I needed a perspective that was not mine. I am a small person. People in my life constantly need to remind me of this. I live a contained existence, and I don't try to actively change this. I like to think I go about my life as I want and try not to leave too much impact. It was not always this way. As a kid, I was endlessly arrogant and proud, which led to the playground beating back in Aruba. I have loud thoughts that go with an unfortunately louder voice. I am going to put it bluntly, people tend to not listen to me as much because they like my brother more. If you try to argue this with me, you're only going to prove you're not listening to me. I shall repeat, everyone likes my brother more than me. I say this with only the most deserved degree of bitterness. This has forever caused me to respond to any sort of attention like a person who has no grasp of the English language. I do not respond well to praise. I internalize my successes. They are private. My rare successes from a young age were treated with thinly veiled indifference, so I stopped talking about them. They were mine. I didn't want to risk sharing them. I created a world where I accomplished all manner of quests and daring deeds to mask my own lack of worth. I could surpass the love my brother received only in my mind. My imaginary accomplishments are just more impressive than what I can do. This has its advantages. I was raised as the antithesis of the baby of the family. I tend to be more self-sufficient while he needs the emotional support. I'm not sure if this is just the nature of things or if I adapted to be this way. I didn't need the attention because I needed to seem strong. I needed a lot of confidence to be able to live without the affirmations of others. It's helped me deal with the one person I will always be stuck with, myself. I know myself. I know how to make me happy. I didn't need anyone. I kept my head down, usually nose first in a book, and tried not to feel too left out. It stung, but I get over things pretty quickly so I can focus on the awesome books about sword fighting. In my mind, I could pretend I was the chosen one, that I was needed, that I didn't have to be alone anymore. I didn't know I was doing this. I was just goofing around in my weird alternate universes. Mostly I was killing dragons and stuff. I didn't realize I was channeling my own insecurities into fictional manifestations. I really just wanted to kill some dragons. I remember a few months ago, I had my brother used against me in an argument for the millionth time. I took this very badly. I was consumed with rage that propelled me back to the 6-year-old getting the wind knocked out of her on the playground. I felt very small, once again, compared to my brother. Remember, you all like him more than me. So I did what any normal teenage girl would do. I wrote a well-worded 3-page email to my favorite memoirist explaining my emotional plight. Memorable quotes include I'm referring to myself as the direct-to-video sequel of human beings. The next day, I got a reply. I won't go into detail, but the author replied she was sorry about what happened, and if I ever considered writing because she really enjoyed my letter. She advised me to keep at it whenever I felt that upset. I noticed once I read her response, I wasn't angry anymore. This huge weight was lifted from my shoulders, and I felt so much better. I processed emotion through text. I could put to words the feelings that would choke me as a little kid. The feeling of insignificance faded away. I didn't seem so small in my own body. All my life, I've been tired of being reminded of my insignificance, that I was small and pointless. It stings when people feel the need to tell you just how small you are. So I wrote about how it hurt me. I could explain what was going on if I wrote it down. I've made a habit of it. Here's where fiction and reality blur a little bit. I was friends with a guy who was what many people wrote off as creepy. That being said, they were mostly right to do so. We were talking one night, and he eventually began talking about his childhood. I listened in awe as he recounted a history of abuse and abandonment I had never heard before. I'm also about 90% sure none of it was true. I had a good reason to disbelieve he had a reputation as a liar. Yet for weeks afterwards, these stories haunted me. I couldn't figure out why they were making me so upset. Clearly he made them up. Why was he letting it get to me? I could not understand why I still felt sorry for this boy. It wasn't until I looked at my own eyes I figured out why. I write stories of protagonists that are blessed with gifts they don't know how to use, none of which are real. Diviners, the elusive chosen one, people with magic powers. Characters with a lot of potential that they don't know what to do with. They were conversions of my own ambitions and emotions. I wrote what I wanted to read. I wrote what I was feeling. I have no idea what to do with myself all the time. I don't know how to help people or even how to help myself. So my characters are often cold, confused, morally ambiguous, who does that sound like? This guy. This is why I write. I write because I got through a lot of pain by using my imagination. I write because that angry, confused, terrified little 6-year-old is still here. She still exists, and she's standing right next to me, absolutely terrified because, oh my God, there are a lot of you in the audience. She's been holding my hand the entire time I've been up here. Maybe I'm not the strong one. Maybe she is. I know her as well as I know anyone. She's even smaller than I am, but I grew. And she still has the chance to grow. I still want to save her. I want someone there to tell her it's going to be okay, that she helped me be strong, that she's tough, that she can get through anything and I'm going to help her. I'm not the brave warrior she was hoping to be, but I'm strong enough in my own ways. I've done everything I can to be the hero in my life story. I will admit it freely. I read 43 books this year. It's safe to say 90% contain magic powers. The rest were comic books. There might have been a John Green novel thrown in there. Most of the books I read involved dragons, knights, or robots. Best way to put this is, fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten. G.K. Chesterton in the foreword of Coraline. The things I love are continually written off as childish and unrealistic. Dragons don't exist. People can't leap tall buildings in a single bound. There is no hero to save us all. I get very angry by this limited way of thinking. What kind of small life are you asking for when you restrict yourself in such a way? As Rachel Hartman wrote in her novel Serafina, the world inside myself is vaster and richer than this paltry plane, peopled with mere galaxies and gods. This is a book about a girl who is half dragon. It's also brilliant, as her existence is viewed as an abomination caused by her mother's selfishness. The use of fantasy isn't about fire-breathing or valiant adventure. As someone who's thought her own birth shouldn't have happened, I identified with this person. I didn't feel alone. Even if it wasn't meant to be deeper than a book about a girl who is half dragon, why does it matter? What's childish about liking something? Fantasy is framework. It's escape. You can have pandering wish fulfillment like Twilight or Children of War narratives like Harry Potter. Let's take a look at nearly all comic book nerds, including me. Do we seriously look like we can fight crime? If you didn't say no, first of all, thank you. Second of all, get your head checked. Comic book nerds are basically giant 5-year-olds. This stuff is real to them. It is a fantasy, and that is the greatest thing ever. You can be Han Solo and Superman. You can be better than them with an actual defined arc and consistent character traits. Do you know how much hope it takes to picture a better future? I never knew. I spent so much of my childhood just hoping for a place where I would belong. I'm still looking for somewhere I belong, and I'm writing about it, and I'm putting it on paper so it's real to me. It's not always easy, but it helps. It really helps to see your own words, because if you find the right way to write them, they can't fail you. To wrap this up, everyone in this room has an imagination, and everyone should use it. People need to create. I'm not saying everyone should be a novelist or a filmmaker or an actor. I'm saying you all have a remarkably unique ability to create. No one else sees the world quite like you do. No one else has your story, and even if they tell your story, they can't tell it the same way you do. Fiction is a way to defy our mortality. Use it. Read what you want to read. Explore worlds that are beyond ours. If you dig deep enough to see what we have in common with those worlds, we discover new levels of perspective. Imagination is how we process real emotion. It's helped me establish who I am, my thoughts, my fears, my dreams. I figured out the person I want to be by living in my own world. So through this conversion of reality, create your own world. If you believe in it, it must be pretty damn spectacular.